Welcome to the What is Smart podcast. We dive deep into the ever-evolving world of intelligence, learning, and success. Join us as we engage with leading educators, psychologists, technologists, and thinkers, unraveling insights and challenging old notions. From EQ to creativity, from tech savviness to social awareness, What is Smart is your guide to understanding intelligence in the 21st century. Let's change education together.
What's going on, everybody? It's Garrett here from What is Smart. What is Smart is brought to you by the Gardens Foundation. Guys, we're in the trenches doing the work it takes to change the way education looks and feels for learners from littles all the way up through life. And to do that, it obviously costs money. So if you can go to our website, www.thegardensfoundation.org, you're going to see it scroll along the screen right there. You can purchase merch. So it's not just us like, hey, give us money. It's a little of that, just to be frank with you. It's also, we've got some really great swag that you can buy, sweatshirts. What is smart? It's a great question for people to even look at. It's a great conversation starter in parties. There's also places to just donate there. All proceeds go to our first crack at it in research with Johns Hopkins University, a study called Global Pathways, where we look at how learners are assessed across the globe. And then from that, we see what works and what doesn't work. But friends, as always, we have the people in the vans searching the internet, doing all the reconnaissance work to find amazing people for you to share their perspective on that big question, what is smart? And today is no different whatsoever. Today we have Rae Hughart. Rae is the CXO for the Teach Better team. We've talked with Chad from Teach Better, former executive director of the Association of Illinois Middle Grade Schools, TEDx speaker, educator, and author of Teachers Deserve It. Yes, they do. That's not part of the title. That's just my opinion. And Teach Better books. Rae, thank you so much for joining us today on What is Smart.
I'm so excited to be here. This is like an honor to be on the podcast, and I'm stoked to talk shop.
Yeah, me too. And speaking of talk shop, I want to get right into it. One of the things that I noticed about you, Rae, and we had an initial conversation a while ago, was that you do a ton of content. I look at that content as help, right? As like pushing the needle forward. So talk to me and talk to the viewers super quick on the content, the daily almost content that you do for teachers and where they can find you. I just want to get that off the top.
Oh my gosh, guys, there's so much content. You will never be able to consume it all. So it's not a challenge. Just don't even bother trying. We have at Teach Better just a huge passion for trying to get information out to teachers in a way that allows them to feel like it's accessible, but also be able to feel welcome to then ask follow-up questions and engage with maybe something that they want to learn more about. So we have a daily morning show that airs Monday through Friday, 7 a.m. Eastern. And that is a morning show to get teachers ready. That also converts to a podcast. So if you're listening to this podcast, you can head over to Teach Better Talk and listen there. We have our admin mastermind that does a segment on that podcast as well. So it's a double episode on Tuesday. And then we also have a show on Sunday that gets converted and heads over to that podcast as well. So we have 2 episodes that launch on Monday, 2 on Tuesday, and then Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. In addition to that, because that is just a small part of the content, we have a super active podcast network over at teachbetter.com. We have blogs that publish multiple days a week. We have mastermind hangouts where people come together and talk shop. We have an active Facebook group. Like, our whole goal is to just get good resources out there. And then in addition to all that, we have like an online learning academy and like the work we do in professional development. So, it's just the more the merrier, right? The more we share, the better we are.
Absolutely. In collaboration, we become better across the board, better parents, better teachers, better construction workers, whatever it may be. Getting people together to talk shop and share experiences, I think, is such an awesome thing. And speaking of that, we have some shared experience. It seems to me, Rae, that your career is rooted in somewhat of the same thing that mine is, which is a little bit of the school system failing us and a little bit of that experience of feeling less than. right? So talk to the viewers and listeners out there a little bit about how you got into education and your overall experience with the public school system yourself.
Yeah, it's really interesting when I talk about my upbringing because I had every good thing you want students to have access to, I had in abundance. And I say that because I wasn't growing up like struggling for much. I had very, very successful, loving parents. I was in a very affluent community on the North Shore of Chicago. I went to great schools that are, very nationally accredited, like acclaimed buildings. And yeah, I just freaking struggled. I just had no idea how to get information to like stick in my head. I was diagnosed SLD in second grade and dropped services right before college because I had a little bit of an ego that I didn't want to put it on my college resume that I was, in special ed. That was very embarrassing for me that I just couldn't figure it out. But to be honest, I owe all the teachers that I had, a special few especially, a huge thank you. After I graduated from college, I wrote a lot of teachers' apology notes because I still use the skills and the tricks that they were trying to teach me in middle school and high school and I mean everything else. So yeah, I was not a successful learner at all. I still consume about 80 to 90% of my content via audio because I really can't read. Like it's not, I don't want to, it's not that. Like I have books. In the background, I have all these beautiful books, things that are really, really
There's
inspiring.
pictures that you've drawn in there. It's like coloring pages and stuff.
It's just doodles, like highlighter. Yeah, but I want to be a reader, especially now because there's such good content out there. But yeah, it's hard for me. I find that when I'm reading, I'm focusing more on the act and skill of reading than I can't consume the information when it's happening. It sounds like we're similar in that.
Very much so. Have you ever looked at a tool called bionic reading?
Okay, this comes up all the time. I need to commit some time to it. Yes.
Yeah, the reason being is I wouldn't even say like, hey, like, because again, reading to me was a shared experience. It was like, it's like, I don't know what to do with my hands defined with reading. Like, you're like, okay, I guess I'm doing this. And you're seeing words. My issue was always thinking, like trying to think I could speed read. Right. And just like kind of flying through with no retention. Right. So
I'm notorious for like reading out loud, like to class, because I was a middle school teacher. I'd read out loud and then I'd be like, can someone summarize? Because I got nothing out of what I just read.
Wow. And at least I respect the honesty. I think bionic reading, I was going to go back to that, is just I saw the text. It's just a font type. And immediately it was like my brain was like, go. And it just started going. And then I was like, I remembered everything that I just read.
Ooh.
It's super interesting because folks with brains just like ours, and everybody's neurodiverse, let's remember that, it just worked. So anyway, it's a tool that someone shared with me that I was like, yes, I still don't read. I still do podcasts.
Well, and I love podcasts, and trust me, I'm such a junkie. I listen to podcasts all morning. Like, it's great. But I still think even now, and I don't think I think it's a stigma that I've developed. I don't think that this is something that all people assume, but I was literally out to lunch with somebody yesterday, grabbing coffee. We had a quick bite, talking shop. He's a business person. And he said, "Oh, do you read much?" And I was so embarrassed to say, I don't. Like, because to me, especially growing up, if you couldn't read, you couldn't learn. Like, reading was the avenue to consuming new knowledge. And so I really struggled with that concept, but man, did it give me empathy in the classroom.
Talking about your time in the classroom. One, are you currently in the classroom? And two, how does your current work in developing progressive frameworks for teacher development, how does that affect your overall classroom experience if you're still teaching?
So I'm not currently teaching. I was in the classroom for a better part of a decade and I loved it. I was a middle school teacher through and through. Love that.
Oh, chopping block teacher.
Oh my God, it's the best. Like sarcasm, they're smelly.
Yep.
It's great. So I was
Ew.
a mean old math teacher, but I also taught writing. And I also taught science for a period of time too. So math was kind of the focus. I loved being able to actually teach math and writing because I really got some good vantage points of how the students were and the engagement that we were able to have through those experiences. But I transitioned into this role accidentally. I know that a lot of people will kind of scoff at that, but the reality is I met two strangers on Twitter and now we have this beautiful.
That story only equates to good in your situation.
Yes, like I literally don't recommend
right.
meeting strange men on Twitter and being best friends with them. Like that is not a recommendation I have as a, 30 something female. I really cannot condone that behavior.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I met
But
two strange men online
love
and
it.
on Twitter. They reached out to me in private DMs, red flag. And
Also, yeah, exactly.
yep.
Anyway,
And
moving on.
and now we have this beautiful team and I don't even know how to explain it. I was working part-time for this team. And then when we were kind of in a spot that the community was growing so quickly, we wanted to make sure that we could support them. So I decided to leave the classroom and go into this role. And I think my experience as an educator has been the only thing that's really helped me in this role because so much of what I do is bring new people, new information into our community. I kind of feel like a filter sometimes where I meet people in a Zoom call or I, meet them down the street and I'm like, you're a teacher and you are, hopeful and you want to help others. Come on in. Like, how can I get you in the community? We kind of mentioned early on that the team produces a lot of content. It's not us it's not us producing content. It's bringing people in and people bringing their ideas. We have guest bloggers that are publishing. It's not me. I publish like 2 blogs a year, it's like, and I'm on live streams. I do podcasts like you, but similar to you, I'm interviewing people. It's not really me. It's them sharing their story, me getting to learn and participate,
I think that's awesome. And talking with Chad, your colleague, talking a lot about how that development of the daily show, even talking with you about the daily show that you guys offer. In that, one of the things that we're fascinated with at the Gardens Foundation is that we believe that once we define the future learner, right, the next step isn't to create a framework for children. The next step is to create a framework for educators. And what we talk about within the classroom is true learning, especially future forward, where knowing Virginia's state bird is irrelevant to success in life. You have access to all these tools. And as I have an AI company as well. You make me sound lazy and I have 3 companies. So it's pretty crazy. But, with the access of AI, learning being totally different moving forward into the world, we have to create an environment that puts forward soft skills, right? That puts forward empathy, compassion, grit. And what we know is part of that is meaningful connection. And it sounds to me, based on the viewership that you started to build, that you're developing that meaningful connection. And that is the biggest challenge, Rae, when it comes to scaling out what we look at as a future forward education. How do you personally connect with your viewers to where they feel it, right? They feel that something's needed that's different.
We do so much work. I'm sure Chad talked about our mastery framework that we use. And I really think it's about being genuine. And I know that sounds silly, but I've been in many conversations that I'm not interested in, and I'm sure it shows all over my face. But
Sure.
I have a genuine interest in seeing other educators' classrooms. I have a genuine interest in seeing educators have more time in their day to commit to things outside of work. I have a genuine interest in hearing an educator not only brag on their students, but brag on themselves. So, I hate to say that it comes with just like believing in the work. But this framework that we train on, that we do a majority of our professional development work on with mastery learning, literally saved my life. Like I could not have been as successful as I was. There's no way. I'm not smart enough to be able to do that. And this silly little idea gave me back the time and element that I loved about my job. And it's fun to be able to like give that to someone else and as a gift, you know? So
Yeah, and to show even because it trickles down, right? If you're showing a group of educators that you can do something every day that doesn't feel like work because you love it so much, then all of a sudden they're either, and I think this is important self-awareness, right? Is they're either looking at themselves and going, I have that in my heart, or they're going, I don't have that. And let's make room for teachers that do, because I think that what I've learned in talking with amazing people, amazing, researchers and psychoanalysts and all kinds of people, it comes down to tech will be there, right? It's human to human. It's not tech that is going to change education and how it looks, because you can't. We talked with Dr. Thomas Herr, who worked was one of the first schools that worked with Howard Gardner's methods. So super interesting guy. And what was interesting about his report cards is they were flipped. They were all soft skills, and then down here was the academics. And he said that because he's I think 73 or 74, he's done this so long, he's watched these successful humans that are empowered in celebrating things like, being more empathetic and being more compassionate and having more grit, right? Like that is, I think, ultimately the answer in future education. And the reason why I think the work that you're doing, Rae, is so important is because you're learning how to connect with educators, even ones that are stuck. Does that make sense?
yeah, I mean, it's really something that we care about on the team. It's a core value. It's not fake. You have to actually want to do it. And we really do. We only hire people that want that. And I can teach you to do anything. I can teach you marketing. I can teach you how to go out and train a district. I can't teach personality. I can't teach you really, really having a good soul. That's just that's kind of the work. And to be honest, I grew up in an environment. I told you I had two fabulous parents. They were both in the design industry. Soft skills was all I had growing up. Like that
That's
was
right.
where I was successful. I wasn't successful in math class, but I was successful as a 12-year-old walking around a cocktail party refilling drinks. Like I'm good at like walking up to somebody I don't know and being able to hold my own in a conversation. And so I really thank my parents for being able to instill those soft skills that now that's become such a passion to help educators integrate into their learning. But it's really hard to integrate something if you don't feel like you have time. So I feel like all these things go together. How can I get you more time? And how can I then allow you to enjoy that time where you get to really instill the things that is important for your students, not just about the Virginia State bird, but also, can they walk up to a conversation? Do they know how to exit a conversation appropriately? Do they have good eye contact? Can they smile? Like these are all wonderful things for us to be practicing as adults.
Well, and I was just going to say, as we move forward into the future, we become just like in education. I am obsessed. My field is early learning, right? Like infant to six, permanent learning. I'm obsessed with this idea of we should be sending educators to improv classes, not so that the focus is engagement, right? The focus is celebrating who you are, right? And understanding who you are. And how do we develop a framework of education that promotes a self-awareness, if you will?
Well, and it's so interesting you say that. I know within your team, I'm sure this is true, but we do a lot of camera time, like because of all these shows, these podcasts, all stuff. So we actually have like a meeting that they have with me, any team member, and we talk about how to be personable on camera. And it sounds funny, but the same principles apply in person. You just don't think about it. I'm like, do you know what's really important when you're on camera? Using your eyebrows. Like, I don't know why, but it's really important and it makes you look so much more personable when you move your eyebrows and you use facial expression. So there's just some of this like training work that those one little liners that you're like, oh, I need to instill that in my students. So when they go do something, whatever it may be, they have these little, little tricks in their back pocket.
So, and awesome that you said that. I think about the grid method, right? That's the method that you guys use in the classroom. And then also thinking about, soft skills, SEL skills, knowing that that is like so needed for the future. One of the things that we're trying to figure out, and this is, of course, being tried across the world, is how do we quantify soft skills? How do we show growth? And more so, not just show growth, translate growth to the stakeholders, right? So that they understand. And one of the things that we've understood that's a through line across it is goal setting, is, working on these things and being able to share the outcomes. Talk to me a little bit about, does the grid method work with that? And if not, like, how do you then develop a framework or structure to show growth in soft skills?
Okay, so you're like really speaking my language right now, so I'm gonna try and not like start salivating at the mouth, but I really think of education as like the perfect deli sandwich. If you are just putting one ingredient on, it kind of stinks. Like we want a really robust, yummy piece of food. And so the grid method's only one part. Like maybe it's the bread, maybe it keeps everything together, but it surely can't be the only strategy that we're putting into our classrooms. And when teachers come to me with certain struggles, they might have a list of 10 things they want to fix. I'm going to tell you, the grid method's probably going to support and better 7 of them. But I bet out of that whole list of 10, you're still going to have 6 problems. It doesn't mean that they won't be better, but it's either completely not impacted or just slightly impacted. One of my favorite other proprietary models that we train on is called the Teach Further model. And this really hits on what you're talking about, which is looking at students and saying, how do we organically have these conversations? Because when we talk to teachers about soft skills, many of them will say, okay, I know it's important. Tomorrow, I'll do an 8-minute mini lesson on some soft skill, and then we're going to stop, transition, take out our workbooks, and go back to subject learning. And that's not effective. It's not a way to practice, and it's not a way to get reliable results that has retention. So the Teach Further model actually immerses students into themed internships that are all sponsored by local or national businesses. And this is where every single moment in the learning process, these organic things can come up. Like, for instance, we had an internship. Again, I used to teach this way and now we get to train on it. But one of my favorite internships is the first day of this unit, students walked in and they were handed an acceptance letter, a certificate of employment, and they needed to produce a strong handshake. So we watched some goofy videos on how to do a handshake. We practiced it back and forth. And then literally they all needed to do the handshake to be accepted for this 4-week job that they were going to do, in addition to signing a contract, which, by the way, they were 12. So they had to go get a parent signature as well, because did you know you can't have a job when you're 12? So like little, we're practicing signatures now. We're talking about consent. And these are really good organic conversations. Granted, the rest of the 4 weeks was a pretty intense math lesson that we were doing, but it allowed
applicable.
And it allowed us during conferences and during different things to practice. Like, I would be conferencing with a student. I'd say, hey, we really need to work on our eye contact during this meeting. We're trying to figure out the menu for next week. Like, we got to figure this out. We got to be able to communicate on it. So these are organic ways to have these conversations because it's in a setting. And then at the end, you're able to reflect with the students. Okay, did you like working for a pizza company? Maybe you want to go into the food industry. Did you actually hate working in the kitchen, but did you really like the customer service element? Okay, well, there's a lot of jobs that have customer service. Like, let's talk about what that could be for you. And so I think these are all parts of that deli sandwich.
Yeah, and I think, there's having the deli sandwich and then there's understanding what's in the deli sandwich, right? Like, and you do that by experience. I think if you taste that sandwich, you know exactly what's in that sandwich, right? For the same reason as, if you're in those moments of what I look at as deeper, true, meaningful learning, where you're actually taking knowledge and applying it directly, immediately into real world situations. I think ultimately that's how school should be structured, right? Is rinse and repeat over and over and over again, whether it's you're looking at a year-long scale for a project down to monthly projects. You see not only it helps children to understand who they are and what they're good at, again, self-awareness, but then it also shows the diversity of the world and how those things come together to make magic happen.
And the money. Guys, how nice is it to have businesses become cheerleaders for your kids? Like, come cheerleaders for your school. It was so nice. I had 26 sponsors annually because we did 26 internships throughout the year. I didn't spend a dime on my classroom for years because when you reach out to a business that you've worked with and they're like, what do you need? Because a box of pens to a business owner is so different than a box of pens as a teacher. I mean, one's gold and one's, oh, I have 30 in the back. Let me get you one. And so it's just a very different way to look at experiences. And, there's so many teachers out there trying to do everything on their own. And the reality is that I don't want to be an expert in owning a pizza shop, but I want to know that I can call someone to get the information to be able to expose my students to the experience.
And if you do that, like you said, those meaning, we don't remember as, even teachers ourselves in the past, the boring teacher that stood in front and was like, blah, 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 and talked at people. We remember, for me, it was Mr. Greenberg in 7th grade, dressing up in Civil War attire and explaining it and captivating us, right? So you would almost think it's, again, we could talk about how the data truly shows no argument around our school system failing us. And then we know these successful stories personally of educators that changed our lives. What do you see, Rae, as the biggest stopgap in that? What do you see right now, currently, the biggest brick wall in a dramatic shift in education happening?
Oof. There's a few ways to go with this. My initial response based on this conversation, I'm all fired up.
Good.
Is teachers being scared to do something different. Because when I do workshops on what we just discussed with this Teach Further model, the scariest moment of the workshop is when I ask them to actually go email or call a business that we've already identified. We have already looked up the information. We already have it in front of us, but taking this step and making the call. And I will tell you that 100% of teachers, I have never had anyone, 100% of teachers who reach out are like, oh my God, that was so much easier than I thought. And the people they reached out to were nothing but kind. Maybe they didn't get exactly what they wanted. Having an invested sponsor is just like having invested students. You have to kind of build them up slowly over time. It happens. But I've never in my life reached out to someone with the mindset of, hey, my name's Miss Hughart. I'm an educator in Bloomington, Normal, Illinois. I'm trying to do this really cool thing for my kids. Do you have a napkin with your logo on it? Could you help me out here? And had someone be like, absolutely not, screw you, and hung up the phone. Never in my life. And I just think that it's so interesting. I think teachers are going through so much. And I think the fear of the unknown is scary for every person on the planet. And if I could just give a little courage to pick up the phone or send the email or whatever,
yeah, I think what you're saying is reaching out to the community is so. And I came from, a failed public school experience and then immediately into private education, trying to think what else is out there through Montessori, right? So I learned the Montessori approach. I get totally invested in independence and some of the experiences that you were describing when it comes to real world stuff is what Montessori called practical life. That was part of the curriculum, is teach them to be good humans. You know what I mean? And that isn't through, again, talking at someone. that is through overall like embedding that experience for them and showing them in the embodiment of that yourself as and it goes back to, you know, the requirement almost of teachers to be good people and for teachers to be examples for their learners. And that is something to say about a vibe that I pick up from Teach Better and the Teach Better team, which is equal parts empathy, compassion towards educators, but almost this like, guys, we're doing this because of this, right?
Yeah.
This is important, and it is, trust me,
Sure.
but we're doing it because of this. And if you forget that, you're going to lose. So let's level up in a way of leveling up connectivity in the classroom. And that bridges me into technology, right? Connectivity we've established as fundamental need. How do you see technology, things like AI, and their role within the classroom?
You know, I think technology is a must. I kind of giggle when the approach is to ignore it or not embed it. And again, it comes down to fear more often than not. Somebody that doesn't know what to do with it, so runs from it. And I understand that. We've done so many things, especially with AI over the last year, just to warm up teachers' fear around it. Like live streams, making funny jokes, giving really easy tips and tricks. We have guidebooks. Like it has to be part of the reality of the schools. But I actually am excited for technology to not be a topic that we're talking about and just have it be another resource that we should be celebrating. Like, for example, when my students would take on these themed internships, they would essentially end the year with a little book, a photo book of 26 different business cards from the owners or the workers that they engaged with that year in their internships. And we have countless students who had saved this like dorky little book from their 6th grade and gone and got internships in high school or gone and got internships after they graduated from college. And that to me is like what also needs to happen with technology. Like, is there a way? And I don't know, but like, is there a time when our students are going to make like, this is a terrible example, but like a LinkedIn profile, and when they're 12, they're going to like become connected? Because that is like another way to use technology that isn't just going into AI and saying, hey, what's the real world application for dividing fractions? That's helpful, but that's where I feel like we are right now. I want that to become like such a norm that we don't have to brag on it. And I want us to instead start looking at, okay, how do we grow a professional learning network for students that don't know what profession they're in yet? Like, is it beneficial for an 11-year-old? And I don't mean this in a creepy social media way, but like,
No, of course.
is it okay for an 11-year-old to have some sort of point of contact that when they decide 10 years later that they want to work in an architecture, that they're connected to my mom, who is a very successful architect in the city of Chicago? And is that cool to have a connection, to be able to reach out 10 years later and saying, hey, you spoke to my classroom in middle school. My teacher thought you were the coolest, person ever. And I just want you to know that it inspired me so much. I grew up. This is now the work I'm doing. Let's talk. I just think this is the world we need to be in.
You're absolutely right, because that is the future. The future is, well, even in the past, we know where education failed us, which is rote memorization and regurgitation of knowledge with no understanding and no applicable understanding of that becomes challenging. It becomes meaningless in some ways. And so kids go through school kind of getting talked at, learning meaningless information, where they could be from a very young age starting to establish who they are. I always say, like, imagine a schooling system where children spent the same amount of the time they do regurgitating, focusing on what they're great at and going all in on that.
Yeah.
You just gave me a great idea that I'll have to share later.
I'm so glad to hear it, because we all know. A
business idea. Yeah.
Well, and we all know, and I don't mean this like I grew up in the North Shore of Chicago. It's all about who you know. Like
100%.
My parents are the most connected people on the planet. When I need something, I still, as an adult, call my dad and I'm like, who do you know? Like, he always has a guy, right? I got a guy. And like, I want to help students create those connections just as much as the connections between certain content areas.
And that's important to point out. It's like, how do you know that guy? How did you find that guy?
Where did he come
Well,
from? Yeah.
exactly. Well, that comes from soft skills. And, you know, in a day and age where talking about technology, kids are this, you know what I mean? And this and this. Trust me, I have 5 kids. So it's all this. You know, in a day and age, it's not that they're not being social, right? It's that social is changing. And one of the big things for me is rather than fearing all of this amazing technology, like here's an example, right? Like because I build cool AI stuff, I also do parent coaching just to understand where parents are at right now because it helps me in my business.
Sure.
And one of these little girls of one of the families that I coach is like fascinated with artifacts. And so I was like, you know what? I'm going to create a GPT for you that with pictures will tell you about the objects, their best guesses, things like that. And that application was amazing for her because it's rooting the real world alongside technology, just like I see AI's implementation is like human input, human output. AI is really awesome. It's when you start just leaning into, like, for me, I had the aha moment when GPT came out. I was working with a company, my school that I first founded partnered with Alt School, which was this amazing company back in the day, 15 years ago, that was building great machine learning platforms for learning. I had the aha moment that a lot of the tech that wasn't there 15 years ago is here now. And I thought I was that guy, right? I'm like, AI can do it. We're going to train these AI models. We're going to scale amazing education. We're going to scale Rae's in her middle school classrooms across the board, right? But then in that experience, I come back to, it's not that. It's human to human. It's those nuanced relationships that you develop that can't be repeated through AI. So I always think about, like, AI is great when you're using it as like a tool belt, like you talk about, like, let me get this super robust tool belt to then be able to serve every learner in my classroom because every learner is different.
Exactly. Holy moly. Yes. I feel like my goal is to constantly put more things in educators' tool belts. That's why we have the podcast. That's why we do the blogs. That's why we have conversations and have the masterminds and the trainings. Like, it's all about just trying to give you the most robust tool belt. I love that.
And what I do love is that you're advocating for learners, not just educators as well, although we do feel that it starts with the people that are in the classroom. And saying that, right? Like, there's all this innovation, there's all this stuff going on in education, but it always ends up, and I think Chad talked a little bit about this too, it always ends up that there can still be change at a micro level in that teacher's classroom every single day. And I think what you do and the content that you're putting out there equal parts addresses the big problem, right? But then also gives teachers relatable, meaningful, usable tools that they can do in the classroom. And that being said, if you had to choose like one helpful tool for any educator, and I know this is a big question, that could save them time right now. I hate to put you on the spot, but what you do every day, you're with educators, that could save them time right now. What would you tell them?
Done. My favorite. You need to be doing student teacher conferencing standing up. Done. It will make you 33% more efficient. No one should be sitting. Everyone should be standing. I don't care if it's a standing desk or if you're just standing at a counter or there's no tabletop. You should never be seated when having a conference, ever.
I love that. And you said student, educator conference. I think that's another key. If you're not allowing for agency for the student in their learning, if you're not co-creating in some micro way, right, what's happening in the classroom, you can stand up and start there. I think that is great that you mentioned because, Rae, not all teachers do that.
I know, and I do want to mention, I do believe most teachers who don't do it find that they don't know how. And that's why I'm like, guys, call me. I just want to help you, because that saved my life. I didn't love anything more than a student conference where I could be a cheerleader, celebrate them, give coaching, and writing on papers is like, it just kills me. Like, we have to figure out how to do conferencing. There are ways to do it. It's just not maybe the way you're teaching right now. So how can I help? It will save you so much time. I'm all about efficiency. So yeah, standing during those conferences though is huge. I cannot tell you the amount of classes I've been in where the teacher is working their absolute tails off and they go to the kidney table, or they have somewhere else if it's a older grade, classroom, and everyone sits down and you can watch the energy go.
Ooh.
Yep. And they get distracted, you lean back. I'm telling you, it will change your life. Never sit down again.
I love that.
During a conference, you can sit.
It would have helped kid, like as a learner personally, me, I'm a drummer. And so I was that kid, right? The teachers are like, please stop tapping on the desk. Please, please, please.
Right.
You don't have a desk to tap on. You know what I mean?
They have their little sways. They do whatever. We can still talk. If I am intentional about my objective of this conference, you can be you. I can do my job, and we can be done quickly.
I love it. And yeah, exactly. Almost like a business. Like, look, I'm going to save you time, right?
Yeah.
We don't have to do all of this. Stop drumming. Stop doing this. Like, let's cut to the actual relation here. That being said, as we wrap up, we always think 30 to 45 minutes. What is a great drive home for our listeners? And any longer than that, it's not a great drive home. Trust me. And I for all of those teachers that are driving hours in the car, we feel you. That's why Rae makes content. That's why I make content. We ask all of our guests this question, and there's no right or wrong answer. But I ask you, Rae, what is smart?
I think I'm going to have to keep with my overarching theme of choose to make connections. I cannot think of the word smart if you're doing it alone. That can't be smart.
Can't be smart. That can't be smart. Very well said.
Yeah.
No, I absolutely agree. I think in such a simple way, right? Like connections and learning to make connections and learning to put that forward it allows for all kinds of other experiences to happen to help you learn. Right.
And I would love to say make connections in the classroom. That sounds great. But really what I mean for the listeners that are, hopefully very close to home and pulling in their driveway, reach out to people, build your network. You need a professional network. You can come be a part of the Teach Better Learning Network. You can be a part of 2,500 different networks. The Gardens Foundation's a must. Like, this is all about just having people to lean on. And when you don't need them, they're still there. And when you need them, you got them right in your toolkit. Like, that's what a network's about.
And I'm sure you've had this same, I would fully agree. I'm sure you've had this same experience, right? Like, I'm just a guy that lives in DC area and I'm trying to do big things. And I never thought that I would be in the position that I'm in now. And the only way that I got there was having the courage, which is something, again, that's really needed in future learning, right? Having the grit and courage to know, to make that call, to email that person. You would be shocked. I know I was with some of the people that got back to me, right? Like, and what is the worst that could happen? They say, Rae, I don't want to talk to you, or they just don't answer, right?
Yeah.
Who
cares? Right.
That's exactly right. I think people worry so much these days in the onslaught of social media and all that about what other people think about you. But no, even in teaching, right? Like, it's scary to do the new thing in the school that everybody else is doing the old thing. Like, to know that at the end of the day, like, they're not thinking as much about you as you think they are. Everybody's got their own shit, for lack of a better word.
Yeah.
And you could be sparking that one kid to change his life the way Mr. Greenberg did with me.
I love that. Yeah, if I was to be completely honest with your community, out of the, let's say, thousands of connections I feel like I can name 4 people that I don't want the connection with anymore. But I mean, that's
Great odds.
that's
Great odds.
great odds, right? And
Yeah.
and there are people that I've had numerous conversations with them and like, okay, we're not good. Like, this is not a good connection for me long term. But God, that's great odds. Like, let me be your next connection, or let my, you know what? Like, not even me. Go connect people on my team. They're the ones that are busting their butt doing the hard work. Like, they're amazing people, and I'm already vetting them for you. Like, I love them. Go connect with them. So that's really all it needs. It's fine.
I love it. I always tell my teachers, it's like, your job is in the trenches in the classroom. My whole job is to serve your needs. So I'm thinking about that.
Yeah.
Reach out to me because I'm the one thinking about serving you. You serve your learners. Don't care about me. I'm the one, that's my job, right?
Yeah, completely. The amount of people that I take a meeting with, I would say I probably have 3 meetings a week of somebody connecting with me that's like, I'm looking for a new job, or I'm looking for an idea. Do you mind brainstorming with me? Can you give me insight I don't have access to right now? Like, and I'm absolutely share information, book a meeting, meet someone new. I mean, this is what we're here for. Like, I have gained information based on my experiences. If I can share it with you, that makes like everyone happy. It's great.
Because ultimately, teachers are learners too.
Yeah.
And you're an educator as well.
Yeah.
So I love it. I love that you get rewarded just as I do in serving the people that you know are doing the hard, great work out there. And so, Rae, thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much for joining us today on the podcast. We so appreciate it. I'm sure all the listeners and viewers are loving your perspective. And that being said, I want our listeners and viewers to be reminded personally for Rae, where can they find all of this amazing content?
Yeah, friends, if you want to connect with me, my everything is just my name, Rae Hughart, on all socials. But to be honest, like I said a few times during this episode, the value is the team. So head over to teachbetter.com, go follow Teach Better Team. It's nothing more than a community of people dedicated to being better. And we'd love to have you a part of it, even if you only engage with us for 30 seconds a year. Who cares? Like, know that we're around if you need us. So it's kind of fun.
I love it, Rae. Thank you for the work you do. And from What is Smart in the Gardens Foundation, I'm Garrett Wilhelm. We'll see you on the next episode. Who knows who we'll have? Have a fantastic day.